to Healthy Perspectives with Jeremiah, a podcast that brings you current social and cultural issues through a clinical lens. Hello. For all of those who are brand new, thanks for joining us. Those of you who are returning, we always appreciate your time. Here at Healthy Perspectives, we love doing new things. And today we're just going to be firing from the hip on a topic that hopefully some of you will find really interesting either today or down the road. I got my brother Jason here, and we have been in the background planning, preparing, purchasing websites, doing the whole thing, trying to figure out what we are going to do as our thing. So right now we've been functioning under the name Healthy Perspectives because I started that as a way of doing the clinical work and getting that knowledge and experience out there to the world to help people. And as much as I want to keep doing that, and I will keep doing that, there is a progression here. One of the things that I'd love to progress on is the work that I'm going to be doing with my brother. And it has to be uniquely ours. It can't just be my thing. It can't just be his thing. It's got to be our thing. And so we have been in that process. And what we're going to talk about today is where we are in that process. We're going to give you an update. And then we're going to just fire off some ideas. And for those of you who are interested and you want to participate in the conversation, send us a note, an email, I don't know, send a pigeon, whatever it is, get us a message that, hey, you would love for us to explore these things. It can be just about anything. So with that, I want to invite my brother into the conversation. Give us a quick update on where we are.
Okay, so I got the websites and I haven't started anything with them yet, but it's Guidosbrothers.com and Guidosbros.com. So it's going to be one of those two. And whichever one we go with, we'll get them all to link up and go to that. So however that gets, in the background, however that gets inputted. And so that's where we are. So the website hasn't been started yet. It's the domain has been purchased. And then between you and I, we're just going to figure out what the heck we're going to do with that. And it's not yet been decided. We've kind of come up with where I'm sitting right now is I think it should be kind of open. It can be almost anything. So we can talk about the mental health stuff still. Obviously that's still on the table. But ideally we'd kind of transition away from that a little bit, and where it has relevance, it still, comes into play because of your experience, obviously. But then we lean on maybe a little bit more of my experience in the professional world, in military, law enforcement, entrepreneurship, that kind of thing. And then we just, see where things go. So we can talk about cultural things. We can talk about being dads. We can talk about, our old experiences from the past, growing up, how we did, and where maybe that has relevance today, that kind of thing. So it can be pretty much whatever we want it to be. And that's kind of where I see it going. I think maybe at some point too, we also need to maybe hone in on something. That way listeners have an idea of what to expect. But I don't know if we have to enter the world knowing what that is yet, because the listeners will kind of guide us in what direction they want to see it go, where they might have input and saying, that was kind of whatever. And like, okay, that was good. And then we can, not do what they want, so to speak, but listen to what it is they kind of have to say. I don't know. That's again, shooting from the hip.
Good. Okay. So what I'm hearing is a couple things. One, Guidosbros, Guidosbros, Guidosbros.com or Guidos Brothers. So it'd be GuidosBrothers.com. Okay,
That's
good.
it.
Want to make sure that I got that, because the audience probably needs that too. I mean, you say the word Guidos. I mean, that's our name. Of course, that makes sense to us.
Yeah.
But to people out there, healthy perspectives, that's pretty simple. You spell healthy, you spell perspectives, you got it right.
Yeah.
But Guidos, that's a pretty unique name. So there's that. Then what I'm hearing is we want more participation from the audience, is what you're kind of thinking.
Yeah. Feedback and reactions to things. And, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be controversial. We don't have to go that route, although we could if we needed to. But what I'm mostly thinking is what's entertaining to them? What can we do in a 15, 25, 35-minute, segment of your day that entertains you, that makes you either think or react in some way, where you're like, okay, that's cool. Maybe that brings back memories for you, or maybe that, it makes you think about questions like we've talked about here before. Is what's the next question then? What's the next question? Whatever it is that we say, hey, we're going to be in your ear for this segment of time. And does it work for you?
Yeah. No, that's good. Okay. So here's a question for you right off the bat then. As I've been doing this for about 1.5 years now, one of the things that I have, kind of worked in, it took me, I've been learning as I go with a lot of the production part of it. And one of the things that I have discovered over the last, 3 months, thereabouts, is the segment piece, right? Like I have a segment I call "You're the Problem."
Mm-hmm.
And, it's all an empathy segment, but it's designed to help people think for themselves as opposed to think the way they've always thought, right? It's to break them out of that shell a little bit and create empathy. Mm-hmm. I have found that to be hugely helpful for me and for some other people because, one, they know what to expect. They know they're going to get some controversial clip that is going to make them go, whoa, maybe I'm interested in this scene, right? Like the last week I did, the President Biden fell down. And there's been all these political takes and this demagoguery around it. And it drove me kind of nuts because as a therapist, I'm thinking, honestly, well, forget the therapist thing. As a person, I'm thinking, dude is old. Old people falling down, that's not funny. Right? When I love somebody and care about somebody and they fall down and they're older, it hurts my heart in a different kind of way. So, by doing this segment, I was able to address that from a clinical perspective. Obviously, in our podcast, I could do it way more personally, right? Like I'm not on my clinical podcast saying that hurts my heart. I could, but that's just not typically where I go. I talk about the clinical aspects of it, of like, we need to empathize. We need to understand that old people fall, young people fall. That's what happens. But we might insert a personal story, an anecdotal story of falling. I remember one in particular, not too long in your past, where, you're a college athlete. You're going to the gym all the time and you fell down and didn't get your hands up. I mean, it hurt, right? And you're not old. And we're supposed to have in my opinion, we're supposed to have some sort of respect and kindness. So those kinds of segments can draw some of those things out. Are there any segments that you have thought of for our podcast?
Yeah, putting me on the spot. Yeah, okay, so let me think. Sometimes I'm not a big fan of talking about myself all the time, or any of the time, really, although I do on occasion. But there sometimes just maybe, let's say, like a childhood segment where it's almost like a reminisce segment where we can talk about, we're two brothers who are very close in age, growing up in a very specific environment, single mom, not around a lot. So we kind of raised ourselves in a lot of situations, let's say, right? So that could relate to some people. maybe that are in the same situation, maybe a brother and a sister, or two brothers or two sisters that are in the same kind of thing. So that would be, let's say, one of them. And then a lot of the things that kind of go around that, which is, not much money, moving almost every year, that kind of thing. There could be our experiences in being fathers, right? Where, we're very close in when we both became dads. I think you're a year or two ahead of me. No, you're probably.
I got 17. What's your oldest?
I got 13. So you're 4 years
13.
ahead of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's that. Now we're both fathers. We both have two girls, but I also have a son. So there's a difference, right? So then, you've never experienced having a boy, right? And I've never experienced that's fine, but I've never experienced, not having a son. So there's, what are the differences, right? And that kind of thing. And there could be, a fun discussion around that.
Let me pause you there for just a second.
Go for it.
I want to come back to the segments, but I want to caveat for a second. I'm just putting this out there. That's part of the reason you need to be up here, man. I'm just saying,
I know.
because I don't have a boy in my life. I've got, I've had some experiences with Calvin and with, my wife's brother had a son, Cole. And Cole was, he was probably, one of the closest, but your boy is the closest that I'm going to get for uncle to have that thing. And dude's 13. I only got 5 more years before he's like out of the house. And
I know.
Get up here. Okay. There you go. Plug. All right. Moving on. What's the other segment ideas?
There's always sports, right? We're both into sports. We talk about, we're coming up on summer training for football. We could talk about football, and that could go in a bunch of different directions. Baseball's almost at the All-Star break. We're about a month away, right? We can catch up on some of that, because maybe I'm not following it as much as you, or vice versa, that kind of thing. And, and we can kind of catch each other up on that, or just discuss, how bad the Royals are. They suck, right?
I'm not worried about that.
I know.
So it's funny that you say that, because people in my practice, they all know. Because if I were to show you my office, I've got baseballs on a shelf. There's memorabilia a little bit, not a lot, but there's some memorabilia around. People can tell. Plus, one of the clientele classifications that I go with, I do some experiential work with athletes from time to time, because I was an athlete and I enjoy that work. And I love the idea of mental strength training for sports. And so I do some of that in my practice, but I don't think I've ever mentioned that here on this podcast. I don't think I've ever mentioned it one time in a year and a half. Probably because that's not the focus of this podcast. I'm not niching this podcast. I'm taking cultural topics. Although I have talked about sports topics a few times, I'm always coming through the lens of clinical counseling. Yeah. And so that's funny. That's you're just making me go, I wonder why I haven't focused on that a little bit more, even in here, because that's definitely part of the thing. Anyway, okay, so sports, what else do you got, man?
Military experience, we could do that. I was active duty, you were reserves. We could talk about different things, maybe around that, or maybe there's some young kids that are thinking about joining the military. We can talk about the boot camp experience, or whatever it is, that kind of thing.
We could talk about the PFT, where I got a 300 perfect score every time, except for once when I had the flu.
Nice. Well,
I don't even know if you knew that.
I figured, because you were a better runner than I was, so it didn't surprise me. I think I got in the 290s, but I could never break 18. So, but we could also talk about how the PFT is different now. Yeah. Right.
I don't even know what it is right now.
Yeah. It's totally different. It's a combat fitness kind of a thing. So,
does it have like obstacle course stuff or anything like that?
No, it's more combat practical. I think it's the ammo can carries, fireman carries, things where you would actually, it's useful. Running and pull-ups and sit-ups, they're useful for sure for just general health and that's important. And that's, I think the intent of the PFT always was just, hey, stay healthy. But that doesn't necessarily do you much good when you've got to, slap on a pack and hump 25 miles carrying a 50 cal barrel. That's awesome. The person that runs a 1730, might be great at that, but a couple miles in with a 50 cal barrel, they fall apart a little bit, and
it can be
not necessarily true.
No, I know. I remember one of the hardest humps I probably ever did. Was definitely not one of the longest. Yeah. Although I had a 34 miler once. That was insane. One day, 34 miles.
Yeah, that's far.
Freaking nutty. That was the longest I did. But they would pull me in to any of the humps because in my unit, they knew that my endurance was just stupid crazy.
Yeah.
But the worst one was we did the fire breaks at Camp Pendleton. We humped up a fire break, and that's soft dirt. For those who don't know, that's literally soft dirt. It's like being at a sand dune, kind of.
Yeah.
You take one step forward and you go a third to 2/3 of a step back every single step.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to the top, I remember this vividly because I was honestly, look, we were all Marines. We had done the basic. We had it was one of the very few times I don't have much of an anger issue like I did when I was a kid. We could talk about that some other time.
Yeah, that's true too.
I was pissed because I got to the top. I had 2 ammo cans, 2 packs, my M16, a freaking radio because I was a comm guy, and I'm still in the front pack.
Yeah.
The front, so it drove me nuts because that means I'm carrying other people's weight big time. And partly as I was exhausted by carrying their weight that put me over. And then we had to set up a defense perimeter on the hill. So we were I threw everything down and I was just gassed. Just gassed.
No, and it's the thing, and see, that's something we can get into, but it's Marines will take care of each other, but Marines also expect Marines to carry their own weight as well. So
Absolutely.
we'll help you when you need it. You're injured, we got you. I mean, it's one of those things, but at the same time, you're just like, oh, it still pisses you off. I mean, I've had to front pack it before too, where you're just like, dude, I got one on my back and I'll take it. I'm not going to be happy with you at the end. Not at all. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things, but
anyway. and honestly, that keyed into, I know we're caveat down here, but it keyed into one of those things for me that always just ticked me off. Some people in this world think that being active duty automatically makes them a better Marine or a better soldier than a reservist who's now going to college and still doing this stuff and making sure they're prepared for a PFT, for a hump, for all and I think oftentimes there is a better level of preparation for active duty, but not always. There are some reserve Marines, at least that was my experience, that just they kick ass and take names, man. They were prepared. They were doing the extra work. It also helped for me that I was an athlete because I was always taking my physical stuff to the next level. And so I was always prepared for those things. Not all are going to do that, but I'm carrying the junk of the active duty. And man, when we got done, it would be things like, I'm never going to complain about the reservists again. And I was like, you shouldn't be complaining about them anyway. We're going to be by your side, and people are going to see that one.
I know.
Anyway,
but yeah. But
it's just one of those things. All right. So we've got reminisce childhood, dad stuff, sports stuff, military stuff. These are all potential segments, right?
Yeah. And there could be, topics of the day, current events, whatever it is. We have an election cycle coming up, next year. It's probably going to start. Well, probably it'll start this year, but the real start is next spring. And there could be that. There could,
it's already started, man.
But I'm going to pretend we We got time.
I mean, the budget, even the budget deadline that they set was designed for the purpose of running into a crisis immediately after an election.
I know.
Ugh, these politicians, man,
Yeah.
they know what they're doing, and in the way of screwing the people at times.
And there we could do a biblical segment. Let's say we have that as an option, right? And you know, an AI segment. We've already kind of touched on that. We can talk about more about that. There's very specific things we could also add in there that we don't even know about right now. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, good. I got a bunch of them here. This was fun because it had a totally different tone than our typical podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Even today, this was a different feel for me, probably for you, and most likely for the audience out there. So, hey, if you're out there, you're listening or you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, send us a note. Send us an email. Let us know what you think we should do in terms of moving this Guidosbros forward. And pretty soon you'll be going to that website and you will find us there. You'll find out what's been recently going on for us. Maybe we'll do a little bit more of that, keeping people update to what we are doing personally in that forum, because that's not typically what I do on my website with the Healthy Perspectives, because that's not what it's about. You also might, for those of you who love following me at Healthy Perspectives, and you want to know maybe some of my opinions on things, I'm probably more likely to give those on Guidosbros, because that's not about my counseling practice. And my counseling practice is very, very important to me. I take my responsibility there very seriously. So you might get a little bit of a different take on me and who I am and what I do in that way, so that, you can understand this guy a little bit more. So hopefully that's all in the works. So, we're looking at time frame. We've been talking probably 4 to 6 weeks. So midsummer, maybe around the All-Star break for baseball or thereabouts, we'll maybe release our first Guidos Brothers podcast. We'll have to come up with something like this, some kind of fancy logo. So we've got a lot of work to do on our end to make sure that we are not wasting your time, even in that format. For all of those who are brand new, please like, subscribe, follow, do all that stuff. If you've been following me for a while and you haven't liked, subscribed, or followed, please do that. Share this with a friend. Get people stirred up and excited about what we've got coming. I appreciate your time. As always, have a great day. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. Take a look at the details of our podcast for links to our website and other helpful information.